Welcome everybody to 52 Living Ideas. Today we have a special treat for you on the future of leadership. This is a new series being led by Jeff Nugent, who is an expert in this area, and I will leave it off to Jeff.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a series where we explore the future of leadership. We will definitely consider things that have been said about it in the past and some things that have been written about it in the present. But as we get further into it, we're really going to explore how leadership may need to, or in fact, how it is evolving, given how everything else in the world is evolving. And so I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been doing this for about 3 decades. About 21,000 people have been through leadership programs I've done over that time. And they were all in person and across the world, mostly in the United States, but occasionally in the UK or Russia or far-flung places like that. And all of them almost all of them were, in a way, by invitation only. And so this is a new experience for me to do a program like this for a very broad audience. And I'm so excited about it and so grateful for all of you who have shown up to at least go on this first step in this adventure. And I hope to make your time worth it. And I hope that it's intriguing enough that you'll continue with us for a little while. So the session design itself is going to include looking at the introduction of a book called The Leadership Challenge, which is among the best books in the last 20 years on this subject. Then we'll get to the core question, at least the current core question with regard to this program, and have a little conversation about it. We'll then move into looking at leadership quotes. And my only real presentation tonight will be in sharing 56 leadership quotes. I tried to get it down to 52 in honor of Shrikant, but I had to stop at 56. And it'll take me about 8 minutes to read those. But then I'll be asking you to, as I go through them, pick one that resonates with you so that you can share just in a minute why that one seems inspirational or important in some way. You'll see like this when we get there. Then I'll be asking you all to maybe put into the chat quickly, what do you think people want from their leaders? There have been a number of surveys, a number of studies on this really across the world, and it does come down to about 8 to 10 things that show up on the top of those surveys anywhere you go in the world. Then we'll idea storm some best questions about the future of leadership that I'll incorporate into future sessions, and we'll share them. And then I'll give you a little preview of what we'll do 2 weeks from tonight to take the next step in this journey. So without further ado, we're going to explore the future of leadership in civil society. Beyond the current politics or issues of the day, I'm going to inflict that norm on myself and ask you all to stay with it as well. So we're not going to be looking at particular leaders or politics or any current issues. And in addition, what I'd like you to do, and I'm going to do this too, despite all the experience I have with this, I'd like to invite you to adopt a beginner's mind with regard to this. Sometimes in person, the way I would introduce this is take a glass of water and maybe fill it a third up and put it on a tray with sides on it, and then get a pitcher and start pouring water into that glass. And you get to the point where the glass was full and the water pouring into it was only going on the tray. And the truth is that unless we allow some space in our minds, unless we allow ourselves to be curious and learn new things, and even learn some new things about things that we think we already know, it's not as interesting a conversation. So we will discover and consider ideas and possible leadership practices, but we won't be debating them. We'll be sharing them and considering them and exploring them, in a continuously curious and respectful manner for all kinds of diverse perspectives. And we will definitely prize best questions over conclusions. It's my experience that all of us, explicitly or implicitly, are living our lives and making decisions based upon questions that somebody has posed or that we are asking ourselves in the conversations that we have with ourselves, and getting explicit about our best questions with regard to leadership to guide our conversation, I promise you, will lead us on an exploration that is far richer than sharing opinions or conclusions. In a way, I would love for this to be kind of an opinion-free zone. I'd love for this to be a time when we can really seek to discover what questions are most important for us to be asking ourselves and each other, both right now and then in the future when we encounter situations that might call on us to exercise or leadership or play some kind of a leadership role. So we will be practicing intellectual humility here, acknowledging that, yeah, there are things I think I know and things I don't know, but the things that I don't know are probably greater by number and by significance than I really understand. And I have come to respect that much more in the last decade than I had before, and I expect maybe you have as well. Then we'll be practicing something called appreciative inquiry. And it's from a lot of research that's been done, but one of the great books on this is the Appreciative Inquiry Handbook by Cooper Ryder, Whitney, and Stavros. And I'll be letting you know about a lot of books along the way. This one's a little bit more expensive, but it's a great book for people who have to practice leadership development. And in it, they talk about, at its heart, appreciative inquiry is about the search for the best in people, their organizations, and the strength-filled, opportunity-rich world around them. Appreciative inquiry is not so much a shift in the methods and models of organizational change, but is a fundamental shift in the overall perspective taken, if you will, the orientation, throughout the entire change process, to see the wholeness of the human system and to inquire into that system's strengths, possibilities, and successes. It's an orientation to discover, okay, what works? And why do we think it works? And how might it fit in some situations, and how might we need to change it in others? I think that contexts and perspectives and vantage points and orientations really matter. If you've never seen this little diagram, it's one that I really love. I'm curious to know, did you see the rabbit first, or did you see the duck? Which one did you see that you then had to adjust for? Joe, which one did you see?
I saw the duck first.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of standing straight and facing to the side, and that's, you kind of have to turn your head to be able to see the rabbit.
That's right.
And so sometimes being able to see things from contexts or situations or vantage points with which we're not familiar, or see somebody else's perspective on something and be able to really get a feel for it and actually understand it, maybe appreciate it, even learn something from it. And then adopt orientations like this appreciative inquiry orientation gives us a different perspective than we would at first get. What I mean to say by that is that sometimes first impressions are wrong, or they are certainly inadequate. And sometimes it really helps to go a little deeper, or see something from a different vantage point. And asking questions is a great way to get you there. In a moment, we're going to read through a little bit of the passage from the introduction of the Leadership Challenge by James Kouzes and Barry Posner. It is also one of the best books on leadership that I think has ever been written, and it is a favorite of many people in the leadership development field. And what I'd like to have, if it's possible, is if a bunch of you, I'm going to invite you to read one sentence, each one of you to read one sentence aloud, just to put your voices into the room. And if everybody who might be willing to read one sentence as it comes up could just put an exclamation point into the chat, and Joe will invite you in order, so he'll keep the order. And I'll just be revealing them, and it'll give us a chance to kind of read through this in a careful way. Won't take very long. The whole thing won't take more than 2 minutes, and the lines are short. But if you'd be willing to volunteer to do that for us, I'd really appreciate it.
So we have Dave,
Great.
Judith, and Michael will start us
Great.
off.
Okay. So, Dave?
Without leadership, there would not be the extraordinary efforts necessary to solve existing problems and realize unimagined opportunities.
Thank you, Dave. Next? Who's up next, Joe?
Oh, I'm sorry. It is Michael,
Michael.
and then Judith. I'm sorry. It's Judith, then Michael.
Judith.
Okay. We have today, at best, only faint clues of what the future may hold, but we are confident that without leadership, the possibilities will neither be envisioned nor attained.
Thank you. Michael?
The leadership challenge is about how leaders mobilize others to want to make extraordinary things happen in organizations.
And teams and businesses and countries and whatever the entity might be. Who's next, Joe?
Allison, Marjorie, and then Julie.
Great.
It's about the practices leaders use to transform values into actions, visions into realities, obstacles into innovations, separateness into solidarity, and risks into rewards.
Thanks, Allison.
Marjorie?
It's about leadership that creates the climate in which people turn challenging opportunities into remarkable successes.
Thank you, Marjorie. Who's next, Joe?
Julie, then Tom.
Great.
Leaders get people moving. They energize and mobilize. They take people and organizations to places that they have never been before.
Thank you.
Leadership is not a fad, and the leadership challenge never goes away.
Joe, you want to take this one?
Absolutely. In uncertain and turbulent times, accepting the challenge is the only antidote to chaos, stagnation, and disintegration.
And I'll finish up here. Times change, problems change, technologies change, and people change. Leadership endures. Change is the province of leaders. It is the work of leaders to inspire people to do things differently, to struggle against uncertain odds, and to persevere towards a misty image of a better future. Boy, doesn't it feel that way? And so so often we're struggling against uncertain odds. We don't really know exactly how hard it might be, what the challenge might be, where the opportunities might be, as well as what the solutions might be to various challenges we're facing, and to somehow persevere towards an opaque image of a better future. So here's the fundamental question, at least the first one. In a complex and fast-changing environment, how can mature leadership help us to authentically, ethically, inclusively, creatively, and productively keep moving forward together? So I'm curious as to which word or very short phrase in this question seems particularly important to you. And all you got to do is just name it for me.
So folks, just type exclamation point if you wish to share what word is most meaningfully.
What stands out? What
words.
seems important?
Judith.
Inclusively.
Inclusively. And does that mean, what does that word mean to you, Judith? What is that? Why that word in particular?
It means to include all the ideas and opinions that people have. So it's the individuals and the broadness of the individuals offering ideas.
It's wonderful. Thank you. And we'll focus on today a little bit is the idea of co-creating, which in some ways is the fulfillment of relying on diversity, creating equity, and then inclusively collaborating to come up with better ideas than we ever could have individually. Who else? Pick a
So
word.
I have Madeline, Lisa, then Allison, then Michael.
Madeline?
Moving forward.
Moving forward. Oh, how did I know that Madeline might choose that? And because moving forward it has to be kind of both imagined as well as in some way envisioned specifically in order to know what moving forward actually means. And it's often up for a lot more debate than you might think. Even approaches to achieving some goal about which we agree. How to get there sometimes seems the hardest to actually decide. Thank you, Madeline. Who's next?
Lisa, Allison, and then Tom has already put his choice into the chat, which is
Great.
productively.
Okay. So Lisa?
Authentically.
Authentically. What does authentically mean to you, Lisa?
Bringing your authentic self to work and making mistakes, correcting your mistakes, and being okay with that position.
Yeah, to sort of being kind of honest, with ourselves and in our own self-talk, as well as being, as we put it, keeping it real with the folks around us and inviting that of each other, as well as then following through on it. I always tell people that I do these programs with, listen, you can tell me, and I'm counting on you to tell me whatever you think of this, because it's the only way I can learn. And so I invite that honesty and say, listen, don't worry about hurting my feelings. I need people to really tell me what they think. So it's as hard as it is sometimes. Thank you, Lisa. Who's next?
So Tom has selected productively, and then Michael's next.
So productively, is a little bit like moving forward, but nonetheless, leadership has in its own way to be results oriented. It is definitely about being, and it's definitely about considering, and it's definitely about values, and it's definitely about inventing and experimenting, but it has to be productive. It's got to result in getting things done and some level of success with regard to that. And that's a real discipline that has to be maintained and embraced. What was the next one?
Michael's next, and then
Michael?
Kevin has selected it. Are you muted, Mike?
Yeah, Jeff, I picked the word mature.
Oh, isn't that great? What does mature mean to you?
I thought of it as someone with a lot of experience who would be able to chaperone all the following important points that you mentioned there, would know how to balance them through the organization.
Oh, that's so well said. That's so well said. My orientation to mature is people who not only have learned from their experience, but have the capability and the orientation to keep learning from their experience, that they're somehow able to balance confidence with curiosity and maintain that. The question that I'll often pose to folks, and I think I said it earlier, that it's the question between about whether an individual has 20 years of experience or 1 year 20 times, that have they really gained from that experience? Because the maturity comes not from the experience itself. It comes from the reflection on the experience. There's a big difference between on-the-job learning and on-the-job job. And so this discipline and commitment to reflection and learning, and not only just learning, but learning the best things, choosing what we're going to learn from our experience that will make us stronger together and make us wiser, more powerful to do the important things that we care about achieving. So thank you for that.
So Kevin has inclusively.
Kevin. So we talked a little bit about that, the inclusively, that inclusively also relates to stakeholders. And I promise you that if you ignore stakeholders who are important, you will not be able to ignore them for long. You will find out who they are and what they care about. And so being proactive about reaching out to and serving and caring for and listening to and responding to the interests of all manner of stakeholders is a really big deal, a really important thing. Who else?
So we have Dave and then Julie.
Great. Dave.
Together.
Together. Ah, yes, Dave. Kind of the thing that the decision in the end is, am I going this alone or are we in this together? Have you got my back? Have we worked out some way to actually come to a good enough form of agreement, at least without strong objection, so we can go down this wholeheartedly and with full concentration together. And it's a big deal. This difference between the individual and partnerships of every kind is, kind of that authentic versus partnership orientation. And wow, absolutely. And was there anybody else?
So there is Julie and Allison, and then we're gonna just move on.
But yeah.
We have Julie.
Julie?
I said help, and then I also thought keep. Help meaning that it keeps the leader working on behalf of us all, and maybe even just being there to use his most skills, like the keeping us focused on a mission, because otherwise we might go in a million directions.
Right. Thank you. So I heard that little pause in your voice there with regard to his. So the language that I'm choosing is there, as opposed to masculine or feminine. I'm trying to remember to do that myself. That's been pointed out to me by dear friends. And but help is a real interesting orientation, because it is in a way, it's a refusal by somebody in a leadership role to be the controlling entity who does things for us. That service is really about enabling and empowering and supporting and leading in every way that makes sense. But it's not it's not the savior mentality. It's not the martyr savior mentality. It's really a mentality of serving. And one thing that we'll get into a little bit is the role, the orientation of stewardship of the assets of an entity in order to help it achieve its mission in a sustainable way. That it's helping us all to do that and play the roles that our talents and experience and expertise really enable us to play as productively and creatively as possible.
So Allison has ethically and creative, and Jody has creatively. So
So we'll do those two, and then we'll be done.
Yeah.
So, ethically is a little bit different than morally. The moral orientation is largely our own personal morals. Ethically is what we agree to be bound by or accountable for together with each other. So there are business ethics and there are personal morals. And These norms, sometimes rules, sometimes laws that we agree to abide by, are really the formation of the culture that is a strong structure for who we are. There's a very famous management writer by the name of Peter Drucker, who was at Harvard, who was at Stanford, who used to say that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And he was really talking about the beliefs and the norms and everything that's in the ethically category tends to drive the success of any endeavor. And if all you got to do is look at where it's failing, and you can certainly see why. Creatively is also very rich. That whether we're inventing things or we're innovating things, or whether we're engaged in some manner of what's called recombinant innovation, where we're taking things that already exist and putting them together differently in a way that maybe never has been done before. People refer to Steve Jobs creating the iPhone as that. He didn't actually invent anything relative to an iPhone, but he did put it together in a unique way and change the world as a result. So this ability to be creative, where we're willing to leave behind things we thought before and willing to imagine and adapt, as they say, to changing in a fast change, to responding to a fast changing and complex environment, it's really a big deal. And those who are successful leaders will be committed to that, not just following plans or whatever we've decided on before, but really being willing and able to adapt to a fast-changing environment. Thanks, you all. So that's a great little introduction to the foundation of what we're about here. How can, in a complex and fast-changing environment, how can mature leadership help us to authentically, ethically, inclusively, creatively, and productively keep moving forward together? Okay, that's right, I'm in charge of the slideshow here. So, in a minute, I'm going to invite those of you who would like to volunteer your answers to, if there's a particular expression or statement regarding any aspect of leadership that resonates with you, a quote or a proverbial saying, or even something that you've written. What is it, and what about it feels important? And my presentation here, I'm going to do a quick reading of these 56 quotes. And feel free to pick any one of them you like as well. They're on 6 slides, and the slides are lettered, A through F, and there's 9 quotes on each slide. So all you have to remember is the slide letter that they're on and the number. And when it comes your turn, if you want to pick one of them, I can get there immediately. Fair enough? All right.
Let's do it.
Here we go. Oh. Okay.
You're on slide B. Yeah, there you go.
Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. Harriet Tubman. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. Confucius. First they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. Mahatma Gandhi. No individual can win a game by himself. Pele. I've got to move this thing here up to get it. True heroism is remarkably sober, very undramatic. It's not the urge to surpass all others at whatever cost. It's the urge to serve others whatever the cost, at whatever cost. Leadership is a journey. You never arrive. Lynn Good. And the previous was Arthur Ashe. What got you here won't get you there. Marshall Goldsmith, rated the number one coach in the coaching field in the world. The cost of leadership is self-interest. Simon Sinek. Whether we're talking about leadership, teamwork, or client service, there's no more powerful attribute than the ability to be genuinely honest about one's weaknesses, mistakes, and needs for help. Patrick Lencioni. The time is, oh wait, did I already do that one?
Nope, there you go. Yep.
Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. Mahatma Gandhi. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones. Confucius. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. Mahatma Gandhi. Impermanence and selflessness are not negative aspects of life, but the very foundation on which life is built. Impermanence is the constant transformation of things. Without impermanence, there can be no life. Selflessness is the interdependent nature of all things. Without interdependence, nothing could exist. Thich Nhat Hanh. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. Dalai Lama. Collaboration, creativity, and respect build lifelong connections that matter and make a difference, propelling us to work together across all boundaries. Diane Luna. What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. The Buddha. If you do not change direction, you might end up where you're heading. Lao Tzu. Leadership is all about serving and providing value to stakeholders. Tom Gill. The time is always right to do what is right. Martin Luther King. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Barack Obama. Just as discipline and freedom are opposing forces that must be balanced, leadership requires finding the equilibrium in the dichotomy of many seemingly contradictory qualities between one extreme and another. Jocko Willink. A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives. Jackie Robinson. My humanity is bound up in yours, for we can only be human together. Desmond Tutu. The challenge of leadership is to be strong but not rude. Be kind but not weak. Be bold but not a bully. Be humble but not timid. Be proud but not arrogant. Have humor but without folly. Jim Rohn. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Maya Angelou. Too many of us are not living our dreams because we're living our fears. Les Brown. The only person you're destined to become is the person you decide to be. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you're a leader. John Quincy Adams. Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. John F. Kennedy. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects the wind to change. The leader adjusts the sails. John Maxwell. You must be the change you wish to see in the world. Mahatma Gandhi. Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Albert Einstein. A life spent making mistakes is not only more honorable, but more useful than a life spent doing nothing. George Bernard Shaw. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. Viktor Frankl. If you want happiness for an hour, take a nap. If you want happiness for a day, go fishing. If you want happiness for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want happiness for a lifetime, help someone else. A Chinese proverb. Challenges are what make life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. A genuine leader is not a searcher for consensus, but a molder of consensus. Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Martin Luther King. The ultimate measure of a man, of a person, is not where they stand in moments of comfort and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. You don't need a title to be a leader. A lot of people have said that. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. Anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm. Publius Cyrus. Management is efficiency in climbing the ladder of success. Leadership determines whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. Stephen Covey. What you do has far greater impact than what you say. Stephen Covey. A good leader leads the people from above them. A great leader leads people from within them. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill. All of the great leaders have one characteristic in common. It was the willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxiety of their people in their time. This and not much else is the essence of leadership. John Kenneth Galbraith. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. Sun Tzu. If the highest aim of a captain were to preserve their ship, they would certainly keep it in port forever. Millions saw the apple fall, but Newton was the first one. It was Aquinas. Millions saw the apple fall, but Newton was the one who asked why. Bernard Baruch. Take care of yourself so you can take care of others. I don't know who that's from. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. John Kennedy. Leadership is all about emotional intelligence. Management is taught, while leadership is experienced. Rajiv Suri. Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Langston Hughes. So there you have it. 56 possibilities, plus all the ones that you all may have brought. Anybody like to share one that's particularly meaningful to them? And what about it feels important?
So folks, go ahead and just type exclamation point if one of these particular quotes had actually resonated with you and you would like to share for 1 minute why it resonated with you. So we'll go with Dave in Tacoma, then Julie.
Great.
Well, naturally, I want to quote another one.
Great.
We're very good, Jeff. Managing by wandering around. And I think that emphasizes getting the input from others, leading from within that was mentioned in one of the quotes, and not being an authoritarian over everyone else.
I love that. Thank you, Dave. Who's next?
So Julie's next, then Michael.
Jeff, can you read? I think it's the last one on page E.
The last one was F.
No, the last item on page E.
Number 9, a good leader leads.
On page E, the last.
Yeah, that would be the
good
one.
Good leader leads the people from above them.
Oh,
a great leader leads the people from within them.
Yes. because it's a difference between, I guess, internal and external,
Yeah.
And drawing out the best in people, and it has to do with respect and being and smart, because
It is.
people just
I
want to
think
feel
that really,
valuable, and if they
I
want to
think that I think that is about meaning and inspiration. I think that's really true.
exactly, and feeling like they count, and
I mean,
that's you're going to have the best
absolutely.
employees if you do that.
Absolutely. Thank you. What's
Yeah.
next?
So, and I just want to build on that just for 1 second, because one of my favorite quotes was, "A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim is fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves." And that's identical to that quote itself. And that was
That's
from
Lao Tzu, right?
that's Lao Tzu.
Yeah.
So that's
There you go.
that's from studying our Tao Te Ching.
Yeah.
So next up we have Michael.
I liked slide C, I believe, Maya Angelou's quote.
Yes.
So it's, I'd also like to relate that to children in schools. I think teachers are constantly reminded many, many years later from kids about how the teachers made the kids feel in the classroom. You have no idea how comfortable, how joyous it is for a kid to find a particular teacher that makes them feel a certain way. And when you hear that much later in life as a teacher, it's a wonderful, wonderful experience.
My sixth grade teacher changed my life, Michael. And so absolutely.
So next we have Allison.
Yeah, I was researching them before because I didn't realize they were going to be up here. And I had originally couldn't decide between, I had Maya Angelou's quote that I had picked out. And then, so the one that I'll read then is my other choice because one's positive, one's negative.
Great.
This is Shakespeare, "Tis the time's plague when madmen lead the blind." And that's kind of what not to do.
It is.
It really is. It's King Lear. So just as relevant today as it was then.
One of my favorite that I associate with that is, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in their mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them." It's a related question.
Hamlet.
And always trust Shakespeare for everything. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Allison. Who's next?
So we have Lisa, Jyoti, and then Judith and
Great.
Madeline.
Establish culture of inquiry, not advocacy. And this approach makes me feel like I'm able to learn anything.
I love that, Lisa. Inquiry instead of advocacy.
Yes.
Yeah. Sort of, curiosity as opposed to, conclusions, and trying to, in a way, exert control by that advocacy, to get other people to just agree with your opinions rather than to stay curious. I think that that's huge. Thank you.
Okay.
Who else?
We have Jyoti next.
Great. Hi, Jyoti.
Yeah, hi. I will choose 8, slide E8. What you do has far greater impact than what you say. Stephen
Yes.
Covey.
Stephen Covey.
Actions speak louder than words. What you do, what you set the example is better than what you say, so that people can see it and they can follow you as a model and reproduce it. But actions, you can say what you want. People want to see what have you achieved so far.
Right. One of the 5 principles in the Leadership Challenge is to model the way. And
Yeah.
it was right there. Thank you, Jyoti. Who's next?
Judith.
Oh, okay. There were a couple, but I gotta narrow this down. So can you go to slide C? It was kind of a long one, and I think it was 3.
It is.
Yeah.
Isn't that
Yeah.
incredible? Yeah.
Yeah. So justice, discipline, and freedom are opposing forces that must be balanced. leadership requires finding the equilibrium and the dichotomy of many seemingly contradictory qualities between one extreme and another.
Right.
And what I liked about this is it doesn't simplify the role of leadership. It's really a difficult task because there are often many different opposing, equally valuable interests, you know, and like you can't sometimes have it all. So a good leader has to be able to juggle that in some kind of way.
You know, I think the most important word in that line is equilibrium. And I think that that is the folks who want to say, well, you know, there's the authoritarian, you know, the authoritative style, and there's the facilitative style, and there's, you know, sort of a relating style, and there's all these different styles, you know, of leadership. And the reality is that any one of them is more or less responsive to every situation, moment by moment, as well as the folks who are part of any group or team. And so part of, I think, what experience and reflection on experience gives people is the ability to keep changing and and respond to whatever is happening, as well as the ability to lead, you know, to model the way through something, given whether it has to be addressed immediately, or whether it's really complex and something has to be invented, or whether everything's going to change in a minute, and so we need to figure out how to prepare for that, or whatever it is. You know, the equilibrium between these different roles and styles is huge, and really, I think, a part of mature leadership, as opposed to people who seem to be stuck in just one way of doing it, which is generally inappropriate 75% of the time. So, thank you. Who else?
So we have Madeline, then Kevin.
Okay, here is this is for whichever one of you guys is handling the slides. I picked out one thing from each slide because they form a group of things that are all related.
Great.
And what I learned is why I always found business writing to be so boring and uninspirational. So on A2, we have Confucius talking about falling and getting up.
Right.
It actually reminded me of Mistake, Mystique. Then on slide B, we have Confucius again. The man who moves a mountain begins by carrying away small stones.
Mm-hmm.
Then on slide C, C7 is Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. D is D5, which is Einstein saying if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it's stupid. Then slide E. E6 is anyone can hold the helm when the sea is calm. That's Publilius Cyrus. And also on E, incredibly enough, is something from a management person, which is management is efficiency in climbing the ladder of success. Leadership determines whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, slide F. There were actually 3 on F. One was F2, which was Galbraith, the willingness to confront the major anxiety of our time.
Mm-hmm.
F4 was Aquinas, keep the ship in the port. And F9 was the broken winged bird that cannot fly.
Right.
So all of these things that I selected are things that return us to the most immediate level of human experience. So the Angelou quote about how you made them feel, I see going together with the Galbraith in terms of actual emotions.
Right.
The willingness to confront the major anxiety of our time. All of the rest of the ones are concrete examples from real life. It's a ship, it's a mountain, it's stones, it's falling over, it's a ladder. And I think that concrete images are something that people really respond to because they're universals. So as we've been seeing in the Tao Te Ching meetup group, one of the reasons that the Tao Te Ching has been a classic for so long is that you don't need any special cultural knowledge to understand it. Everything in it is, all the examples are about immediate experience. They're not about technology. They're not about mythology of the time. So yeah, sorry, I went on for a long time.
Wow, thank you so much for that. You know, I it's so funny. I hadn't put together unequivocally the major anxiety of their people in their time with hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken winged bird that cannot fly. I really think that the ways that those relate deeply to what we all feel individually and together in so many different situations and opportunities or challenges, that it's a little bit kind of below the surface, but responding to these deeper things in us that are just essential. So all of you, thank you so much for that.
So we have two more people to go, and then we're going to cut it off. So we'll let Kevin and Marjorie.
Great. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Jeff. I listen you carefully, like it. And I back to the C6, slide C and 6. I will read it again. The challenge of leadership is to be strong, but not rude. Be kind, but not weak. Be bold, but not a bully. Be humble, but not timid. Be proud, but not arrogant. Have humor, but without folly. Jim Long. Yeah, I like this one because it's kind sometimes like a leadership need equilibrium, keep the balance both sides, and it's kind of a little bit dull, yin and yang. And I actually got a second part about E6, E8, E9. Actually, it's Jyoti, Julie, and Joe automated multiple. My question for Jeff, when you organization, you got a hierarchy, says, let's see, as a leader, how do you consider this from your team? Let's see how level, let's big organization, let's see 10,000 employee, how do you use what's maximum level? The 7 level or the flat management style? That's the first one. Second one, how big the team report to you? And even follow question, let's say you lead the first layer, top level leadership executive. Should you work in with, let's say, level 5, 6, how do you work with? Because you jump a lot management leadership. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah. I mean, I actually can add something to this a little bit, if that'd be okay. I mean, the idea of a level organization actually I found has worked much more efficiently than some of the hierarchical organizations that I had been in. When I was a consultant with Deloitte, it was very, they had open door policies, and the partners treated the senior associates just the same. And so even though they had a hierarchy in sense that in structure, it was everybody treated everybody the same. We could actually even engage about going on different projects, and it led to a whole lot more collaboration and a better working environment. So I have been and currently in a hierarchical organization where the chain of command actually stifles innovation. So, and there's always the top person that's going to get the credit, or they're going to be blamed. And so when I was with at Deloitte, we were in it together. We were in as a team. So I think that really kind of expresses how we did it together, and the partners really didn't see themselves any different than the individuals that were working with them.
It's kind of like that word "together" in that opening question. What is it? What does it mean? Are we actually in it together or not really? Terrific. Was there one more, Joe, or are we done there?
Oh, no, there was. Forgive me. There is Marjorie.
Marjorie.
Okay, so I know we're not talking politics, but just generally, so many of these quotes spoke to me with regard to these anxious times, I will say. But specifically, I think it was slide C, the one about dreams and fears. 8. Too many of us are not living our dreams because we are living our fears.
Right.
Brown. So that really kind of resonated with me, because you can't really go through something, you can't move forward without really confronting the obstacles that get in the way. And I think so many of us operate or act on our fears, and we don't even know that we have those fears.
Right.
So I think that just struck me.
Thank you. I think that's a very powerful quote. It's a tough quote, so it's a tough one to take on. Okay, so let's move to the next part here. I just wanted to share this with you all as I was going through this. This is my favorite mural in New York City. I live in the middle of New York, and this is I was going through Harlem and came upon this. It's put together it was done by something called Art Justice, and the title is Global Women Heroes. I raise up my voice, not so I can shout, but so those without a voice can be heard. From Malala. It's just this is just such an amazing mural up in kind of the southern part of Harlem. So I have a question for you all. What do you want from your leaders? What do you think people want the most from their leaders? And if you could just put maybe a word or two into the chat. That's how we're going to do this one, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Invite people to put a word or two into the chat. And then, Joe, if you can read them to me, and
Sure.
then I'll share with you the 9 things that seem to show up on surveys all around the world.
So I know that Marjorie answered this earlier, and she put measured judgment, listening, and guiding based on needs.
Great.
And so far we have integrity, recognition and fairness, energize, security and coherence.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all.
It's just one thing. One
setting
thing.
examples.
Yeah. So here are the things that seem to show up in surveys across the world. Gallup did one that came up with 4 of these, and I've continued it over the last couple decades, and so I've come up with these with a few more. So the first one, obviously all the time, is trust, that a person will do the right thing for us and will operate with some sense of explicit ethics or values or principles that we can count on. Sometimes I call this, a sense of honor, but trust is definitely the first one across the entire world. Second is compassion, somebody who we feel cares about us and is responsive to our needs. There's that great story about the newspaper reporter who was standing by the railroad car that was taking Roosevelt's body for burial, and the train went by, and there was this man standing next to the reporter just weeping, and the reporter asked the man, did you happen to know, did you ever see Roosevelt? Did you know him personally? And the man said, no, I never met the man, but he knew me. And it's just such a powerful statement. Stability, interestingly enough, kind of predictability, norms, a kind of an equilibrium we talked about, but just a kind of order, in the face of the chaos of the world, that you can count on that order. The next is hope, which is kind of credible inspiration. It's not Pollyannish. It really is the ability to anticipate and believe that we're going to make progress on things that are important to us together. And the next is competence. Really the kind of just the reasoning, to some extent the expertise, but certainly the ability to deliberate and relate to others in a productive and persuasive and listening kind of way, and the ability to make decisions. Often when you hear people criticizing a leader, they say, oh, the person doesn't know what they're doing, or they can't make a decision, or there are just different kinds of competence that seem important to us. Next is capacity, that we have adequate health and time and money to be able to be available to exercise our competence, and do the things that need to be done. You look at the attention that's paid every year to the annual physical, and so that health, that capacity, we get enough sleep, are all really important. Next is integrity, which is a word that's a little bit misunderstood out there. Integrity really means the alignment between words and actions. Does a person do what they say? Do they mean what they say? And does that show up in what they do and how they do it? That alignment is all about what integrity means. And then next, communication. Not only the ability to be clear and be inspiring and feel like the person's telling you the truth, and that whatever they're saying, it's really based on things that are important and defensible, but also that they can listen, that they can ask questions and really listen to the answers. There are people that we have recognized in at least in the United States, who we thought of them as really great listeners as well as communicators. And then last, we talked a little bit about this earlier, but the wisdom that's learned from being able to reflect upon experience, to learn from experience, and then be kind of a continuous learner from experience, that we really want our people in leadership roles to not just be endlessly doing the same thing, but really to be learning from whatever's happening. So it's not a complete list, but it's an interesting picture of 9 things that show up very often in surveys across the whole world. The first 4 there were from the Gallup poll that was done, I think, in 80 countries over several times over the years. And then competence was the first one that began showing up as things began to get complex in the world, and then the others followed. So for future sessions, and how are we doing for time, Joe? Will we be able to do the breakout rooms?
Absolutely. Yes,
Great.
absolutely.
So we're going to go into breakout rooms for just a moment. We're about 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes?
We could actually do 15.
Okay, we can do 15 minutes. And I'd like you to answer in the breakout rooms, and Joe, if you would put them into the chat for when people are there, they can see them.
Sure.
What are your best questions regarding any aspect of what you consider to be um, good leadership. And so, and those might be, how can we do such and such? How can we generate such and such? Be it about the quality of relationships, be it about vision, be it about results, engendering trust, whatever it might be. How can we best do that? And then thinking about the future. This is 2021. There's another 79 years in this century. So maybe we'll think of it as the rest of the 21st century. How do you think the philosophies or purposes or even practices of leadership might change in what we imagine to be the foreseeable future? And that question might sound like, I wonder if such and such might lead to a change in this particular thing that we often do or have done. What might be the evolution and the adaptation of leadership in response to the evolution of the world and of societies? So it's really just best questions. And I'm going to take all of those questions into account regarding the next session we have together and future sessions. So this is your chance to begin, or really to continue co-creating that with each other and with me. That's the big reason why we're doing this. And when we come back, all we'll be sharing will be the questions. We won't even begin to answer them. It's just putting the questions on the table.
So everyone, I've put the questions in the chat so everybody has them. How many per breakout room would you think would be a good number for this conversation, Jeff?
4 or 5.
I agree. All right, so I am going to set up the breakout rooms now.
Excuse me, Joe?
Yes.
The chat in the main session doesn't carry over into the breakout rooms.
Right.
Okay.
Can you put it into the breakout chats?
I will.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you, Madeline. And thanks for such great things that all of you have shared.
Yeah, this has been fantastic, Jeff. I mean, this is very.
I really appreciate it. You really stepped up.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that you brought up appreciative inquiry and all those tools that we used to use in order to get really great results. So thanks.
So Joe, should I go ahead and join a group?
Yeah, so why don't yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Would you like to, will you join one as well?
I'm going to join one as well. So,
Great.
yeah, so which, I'm just going to broadcast the message.
Yeah, go ahead.
first.
Yeah.
And hopefully, but I'm, it's funny, I'm taking what I just put in the chat and let me get my clock right, actually my timer as well. Okay, let me just grab what I did in the chat really quickly. That's limiting the number of the characters I can actually put in, unfortunately. So
Maybe it has to be 2 separate entries.
that's what I'm gonna do. And then we can join our rooms. Which room
I'll let
would
you decide wherever you think it could be most helpful.
I think room 1 actually would be great. for
Okay,
you
good
to
deal. Do I need to
And
choose something, or can you just?
can you see the breakout room in
I
progress?
can't. No.
Oh, you can't.
Well, wait a
Okay.
minute. I bet I can if I click on something.
So if you click on the breakout room, if not, let me see if I can assign you.
Oh, breakout rooms. Here we go.
Yeah,
I got it.
and you just hit join to whatever one you.
Move. Let's see.
There's a join button right on the right.
It's funny, there isn't. Oh, there it is. It's with the number. Okay, great. That's
All
where
right.
I'll go.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. No, I'll see you shortly.
Hey. Hey, everyone. Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
So, Tom, did you actually say that line about stakeholders that I put that quote in there?
Yes, I did.
You said it to me. I couldn't find a place where you had written it exactly that way, but you did say it to me, and I said, "Okay, I can quote him."
You can. That's yeah, it was well done in that case.
I was actually going to comment on it too, though. That was one of the ones I wanted to comment on, is the idea of delivering value. It's such an important thing, as opposed to looking at things as just costs, and from a cost perspective, and versus a value perspective. It's a totally different mentality.
Good. And what I find is that if a lot of people talk about value these days, and then I take a deeper look and I find they're just talking about financial value and none of the other human values, you know? So this value thing is out of control.
It is. So welcome back, everybody. Now we're going to go to our takeaways from the breakout rooms. And I see we have some people that have joined us a little bit late, but remember, these are just for future sessions. They will help drive our future sessions.
And they really will. So we're really counting on great questions from all of you who would be willing to contribute here. We are co-creating this exploration. I promise you that's true. The next session is not entirely planned.
So
you're agile.
Exactly.
I'm trying, Tom.
Yeah.
So we have Kevin first, then Judith.
Yeah, and try to share your question inside of about a minute so we can get in, 15, 20 questions here. It'd be really great.
Oh, I see.
Can I see now?
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
go.
What is the future of leadership or leadership style? Like following question, what is a leader's responsibility? Thank you.
Thank you. Judith.
Okay, first question. So when you were talking, Jeff, and listing all the things that we want from our leaders, and when I listened to my group, I realized that while I was constantly mapping the needs of my coworkers, that's what's on my mind. So I was thinking, are the qualities that we need, that we want, or that are part of good leadership, what are the qualities that are different from those that we elect and those that we, are our leaders in our work environment or some other environment? And then the other question is, in the foreseeable future, right? A lot of times for our leadership, we make a lot of complaints about our leadership. So what would be our role as our responsibility, as taking part in the goals that we set for our leaders, that we contribute. We don't just elect and then check the box in the ballot and walk away and expect them to do the work. So, and even in the workplace, how would the future of leadership be more inclusive to co-leadership or whatever, input from and responsibility from people?
Thank you so much, Judith. That's really rich and powerful.
So then we have Dave, Michael, and Allison.
Yeah, in the small group, I was sharing being open to change. And now I just realized I need to broaden that a little bit because external change is obvious, environmental changes, changes in the marketplace, but also internal changes. I was in a wonderful organization called the Phone Company, but you have these guys who've been there, pardon me, men and women that have been in a job forever and think, oh, Joe's always done it and he's always done it that way. Oh God, Joe's leave. What in the holy heck are we going to do now? Oh my gosh, let's panic and go run around with the hair on fire. Thank you very much. Good. And it's been a great evening. Bye.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave. So we have Dave, then we had Michael and Allison.
Yeah, I was talking in the breakout room about us being advocates for children, for young people to collaborate and to do that at a very young age, not only just through the traditional means, through the physical sports, but you could be on a chess team, you could be on a math team, you can be really doing anything as a young person where you're put in a role of either being part of the group or also being a leader. I mean, Jeff even mentioned, raising the flag every day at his school, or just being real advocates for young people to get them involved very young with collaboration.
It's a great question.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes. Allison, and then Max, and then Madeline.
What can we do to ensure that our leaders do not become corrupted by power?
Very good.
So my question to the best question about any aspect of leadership was, how do we evaluate a leader's worth with more than just anecdotal evidence, but actual, quantifiable performance metrics? And the second one about the future was, how does technology factor in for the practices of leadership in the future?
Terrific. Thank you.
And Madeline.
Okay, my question is, how can a leader effectively use hypoliteracy in leadership? I don't know if the word hypoliterate existed before, but it does now. The prefix hypo means under or underlying, beneath. So all of those things that are non-literate activities. So there are things like everything from parades, uniforms, corporate dress codes, visual emblems of every kind, singing in uniform, all of those things that have resonance with people on a level that underlies literate development, I think are very important, because many people in the world are not literate. Even ones in supposedly literate societies.
Oh. Thank you, Madeline.
So,
Lisa, you're on mute. If you were.
Oh, I was just listening. I was enjoying Madeline's comments.
Oh, good. Me too.
So I don't want to put you on the spot, but Marjorie, you had a good question or would you take away? Would you like to share, or I can?
Sure. I was trying to frame it in your STEM, Jeff, but it isn't exactly capture the whole thing. But I'm interested in the role of women in leadership, and why it's important for all of us to engage and participate in activities that support that. And even what's the role of women? What's the role of for the future for women in leadership, and how is that going to change, the world?
Thank you, Marjorie.
And Lisa, did you maybe want to share? your question as well? It was
Sure. How can we help people feel abundance rather than fear or scarcity when making decisions or walking through life outside of work? Inside and outside of work, because it's all around in abundance. Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm actually going to go ahead and add one, if you don't mind, is that how does a leader make decisions in chaotic situations with imperfect information?
I have one now too.
Okay, Joe.
What can we do about the capital, the reputation and this money-based mentality? What can we do overall to change to engender more trust in business and capitalism, and besides the setting an example ourselves?
Thank you, Julie.
As a follow-up to Joe's comment, I would love to take a look at how some world leaders in the past made decisions in chaotic times and see if there's, any kind of common threads or differences. I think that might be kind of interesting.
Thanks, Marjorie.
Dave.
Yeah, it just occurred to me, Jeff, how do we develop new leaders?
Which is a little bit related to Michael's sort
Exactly,
of formative
yeah.
years question.
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing.
I can tell you, Dave, I actually designed and led the largest emerging leaders leadership development program in the United States. We at the time we were doing we were working with about 4,000 people around the world and around the country, and they had to apply to get in, and it was hard to get in. And there were about 90 in each group, and when I walk into that room and there'd be 90 of them there, I had them for a week. You felt like you were looking at people who were just going to change the world. It was so inspiring, and in a way, occasionally a little unnerving, because they were so smart and they had so much energy and they had so much passion, and it was like, okay, everybody better bring their A game to play here, and it was some of the most amazing experiences of my life. One of which was actually a program in Russia with 20 people under 40, where we met with them for 10 days at a time every 4 months in the early 90s, when Russia was going through so much change there. It was called New Leaders of Russia, and they'd been picked from about 5,000 applicants. All of them spoke perfect English, which was great for me. But it was there's just things like that in next generation of leaders that are an incredible privilege and pleasure to be a part of. And each of you, whenever you might get the opportunity to join in anything like that, related to anything that's going on in your community or your religious institution or your schools or whatever, I would say just jump at the chance.
So Dave has another comment, but before that, just read Tom's couple of questions there in the chat. Is what is your most critical objective to achieve? Which is, I think, is a fantastic one, because setting goals and aligning that with your values is really kind of something that leaders often make mistakes with. I've found in the past, because they honestly don't even know necessarily what their values are. And then the future, how can we organize real complexity of our organization? So I think that that's another fantastic question. How do you deal with complexity in an organizational framework? So Dave.
No, you got me. Thank you.
Okay, all right, so.
It's going to take a little bit more emergent behavior, isn't it, Tom?
Well,
does
anybody else wish to add?
I put a.
Oh, Kevin, it was Kevin, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Forgive me.
No problem, man.
I have a whole page of notes here for
Kevin, then Judith.
You may say yes. What is everyone need a leadership skill? Maybe yes, right? Next question would be, let's say everyone want to be a leader. Who is the right leader? How do you select a leader? Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Plato might have some actual input on that.
Kevin, I was just looking at a thing today, which just came up as I was preparing for this. It was 50 questions to ask somebody who's interviewing for a leadership role. I thought it was pretty intriguing, actually, you know, and there were a good 20 of them there that I thought were pretty good, but they were missing out on a number of the things that you all are suggesting. So, you know, maybe we need to amend that article.
So Judith.
Yeah, I don't know really how to say this, except I'm just wondering, like, obviously leaders have to have all these qualities that we're going to explore, but is it enough to just say, I want to have all these qualities and then I'm going to lead whatever? Or do leaders have to have some sort of value system that they're working toward, you know, something specific isn't that like a critical, which comes first?
It's sort of like leadership without ethics is a prescription for a catastrophe. And so, you know, the ethical questions, which are actually sometimes harder to come up with firm answers than you might imagine once you actually get into the complexity of situations and you know, certainly competing wishes as well as competing needs. So that's a very rich subject, and I agree, Judith. It is essential. It is ignored at one's peril.
Yeah, it's one of those examples where I think of what you said earlier, culture eats strategy for lunch. And then that's
breakfast.
One of those, yeah, or breakfast. Yes, that's all right. They don't even get to lunch. So.
It'd be nice if you could get to lunch.
So
it'd be open by breakfast.
Yeah, and do you wish to unmute and share your question or your takeaway? How is leadership different in different cultures, West and East? I think that's fantastic. Fantastic question.
So it's 8:47. So we're nearly done. Just offer any other any closing thoughts before I move to our final remarks here?
Can I do a short?
Please, Tom.
Okay. You probably never heard the word datocracy. It's like democracy, but it's not democracy, it's datocracy. The World Economic Forum had a little discussion on it. Anyway, long story short, I wrote a book on it this summer. You can all have. I've sent it to Jeff and Joe, whose emails I have. And what it does, it says, we don't need political leaders anymore. Each human can state their values and a computer can interface between them and get things done at the other end, like allocating money or changing laws. We don't need political leaders. They're more of a disaster than a help. Computer is the right interface.
Wow.
Have fun.
Tom, I would have expected nothing less.
You got a copy of it in your inbox.
Thank you so much.
Anybody else who wants it can email me at my email there. I'll send a direct copy.
Wow, Tom.
Jeff?
Thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Jeff, it seems to me that your work is something that is very conducive to getting the whole leadership more on track.
Well, I
say?
tell you what, your all's perspectives here, individually, but really, especially in the aggregate, I'm really looking forward to thinking of, imagining these a little bit as puzzle pieces and seeing what kind of picture they create. Because, if you just sort of, I mean, I'm sure you all were not taking notes as copiously as I was, but the range here from kind of, growing a person internally in terms of how they think of themselves and what their values are, and how those become ethics that then they would not only seek to kind of abide by, but really promote. And that just that whole internal, all the internal qualities stuff. But then, even on the other end, we need to get things done. And what's the best way to balance a person kind of internally, and then also kind of the equilibrium in our relationships with each other, and how we can really truly co-create things together, which I think gets a little bit to Tom's idea there in terms of, we can actually take advantage of a much broader range of ideas that could be considered, and which could receive feedback that could lead to inventions and innovations that would probably otherwise never happen, given all the limitations of input and ideas, and seeing things from different vantage points that all matter. It's just a way to do it quicker and better, and at least get us maybe past being overwhelmed by the complexity and competing needs or opinions. We need some things to get past this, because we're sort of stuck, and it's not easy to figure out a way through this. But it does seem like there's a whole bunch of things that are coming together, and maybe, maybe the pandemic is just a dress rehearsal, for some things that we needed to handle in order to then be able to move forward as a human race, as well as each of us in our own places. Anyway, just, some thoughts there. Joe, let me go ahead and share the screen again, and sort of just by way of finishing, right?
Sure, go right ahead.
Okay. So thank you all for that incredible sharing. So some of the things that I have in mind, Madeline, go ahead.
Yeah, before we before we move on to this section, I just wanted to say, Tom, I am completely in favor of your idea, as long as I am the one who writes the algorithms. And I think that is the weakness of it. And if you're thinking of something like voting on what the values are that get used for the datocracy, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, then it's basically using participatory democracy and having a computer implement it. So I don't really see, I don't really see either way. I don't see it as being a different system of government, because you're still going to have human input, whether I am the tyrant, or whether it's done with democratic voting, or whether it's done in a Republican manner, with experts determining what the weighting of the algorithms are. It's still kind of just displacing the main questions by one level.
So we'll definitely come back to that, but we got 5 minutes left. But thank you, Madeline.
Wow, what an amazing conversation that would be.
That's something we're going to have to figure out, and how to make that a conversation.
Oh, Madeline, thank you so much, and Tom as well. So I've been developing some frameworks that allow us to kind of observe and orient and relate, and kind of think about not only what it is we're trying to achieve and why, and make decisions in complex situations, and then act really as experiments and learn the right things from those. I've been developing a little bit in the way of probably too simple, but hopefully possibly useful frameworks. And I want to share some of those things with you all as we go forward here and get your own critiques and ideas and improvements of them. I think you'll enjoy talking about them. And then to me, it does seem like there are actually 5 graduates of my leadership teams who have won, of my leadership programs that have won MacArthur Genius Awards. And one of them lives right here in New York City. And she said to me, I got together with her, she said, well, you know, leadership happens in teams, right? And I thought, well, okay, that's an interesting thought. And this kind of methods and ways of growing cohesive teams through stages that can really maximize people's ability to co-create, which I think is at the heart of all this. I think that the ability to co-create not only solutions to vexing problems, but also seeing the opportunities and maybe even creating the opportunities there to be seized and sustained in the face of what might seem like vexing challenges is, I think we're all kind of dancing with that right now. And so I'd like us to explore it a little bit together. And then this conversation at the end here, you know, a future-oriented, you know, definition of leadership that really is connected to the kinds of values and ethics and what is meaningful to us as humanity moving forward, and to do it in a way that somehow is inclusive and takes advantage of whatever technologies might support it. I think that those are conversations we need to have, and I think we're up to it. And so those are some of the kinds of things that I have in mind, along with the full 1.5 pages of notes that you all have just have shared with me. So I'm really looking forward to co-creating this together and having the conversations. Where I'll be going shortly here, I like to walk around. I live in the middle of Manhattan, and this is a view from the Pier 45 that goes out into the Hudson River from Manhattan's West Village, because I think gaining a different perspective on things is really helpful. And the multitude of perspectives that we gained just in our conversations this evening, I think will serve us well. So I hope to see you all again. And thanks for your contributions to this experience.
Thank you. And thank you, Jeff, for, you know, this has been a fantastic beginning to, I think, a great series and a much needed series in the 52 Living Ideas meetup. So, I mean, some of the things that you brought here, you brought your experience and you've engaged us all, and I'm really excited to be doing and honored to be doing this with you. And I look forward to doing this with you in the future. So thank you.
Terrific.
Thanks, everyone. And everyone have a great evening.